All right, hello. Let's start on module 4, which we are utilizing rule of thirds to create compositions in Illustrator. So I'm just gonna take myself off the screen so you can see everything. And we're starting with a new document. Our artboards are going to be 9 by 9. We're working in CMYK color, 300 ppi. And if we scroll down to more settings, I have 8 artboards set up with a spacing of 3 inches and 4 columns. So let me just title this. And create document. All right, so we have our artboards spaced 3 inches apart. Let's go ahead and set up our grids. We want to make sure our grids are spaced every 3 inches with a subdivision of 1. Okay. And then to activate our grids, view, show grid. And then view, rulers, show rulers. Next, we're gonna put in our guides, and we're gonna just slap them onto the every 3 inches. So let's place them. And I'm gonna click and drag, holding Option, and just duplicate them over to the next. Do the same thing, click and drag all 4, holding Option, into the next 3-inch mark. Now let's do the horizontal. And then drag, holding Option. I'm just going to zoom in here to make sure it is good. Yep. Oop. Cool. All right, so we are set up with our artboards split up into 9 slices. I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer Guides and then lock them. And then that way I can't touch my guides. And I'll start a new layer, and this will be the layer I put my shapes on. So for this project, we're going to be essentially, let me pull up my examples. We're going to be creating some just abstract compositions using 3 colors and then a variety of blend modes, opacity, and effects, which I will show you how to do all those things. So let me move this back. And then, oops. Cool. So now that our artboards are ready to go, we can start designing, but let's first talk about opacity, which we did, I believe we did in module 1, and maybe module 3, but just to go over it, let's give this guy a fill color. So what is opacity? It's basically how opaque or transparent your shape is going to be. And let me make a duplicate. Just do that. So if I lower the opacity, make it a different color too. If I lower the opacity, you can see that, it has some transparency. Lower it even more. But what's really nice is if you overlap shapes, you can get some really interesting effects going on. And of course, if we remember from like grade school, mixing colors, yellow and pink mixed together is gonna create this like orangey pink, right? But I think that's kind of it for opacity. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It is, how opaque, how transparent it is. And this will end up giving you some cool effects. The next, let's make that 100. The next part I want to go over, or like effect that we can play around with, is the blend modes. And I'm gonna go into Window, Transparency. I'm just gonna drag this over there. So transparency is, this is where we can play around with blend modes. And if you've ever played around with Photoshop, you might be familiar with these, but they give sort of different mixing between two shapes. So let's put this 100. So we have like darken, multiply, and remember yellow is on top. Color burn, lighten will show the lightest color. Color dodge, screen. Let's make this, maybe we'll give it a gradient so you can see it a little bit better. We could do overlays, which overlays that color on top, and you see how the yellow, when it's on top of that saturated blue, you're not really seeing a lot of the yellow, but when we place it over the light part of the shape, the yellow really starts to show through. So these are a good way to, again, add visual effects without doing any sort of actions that are not undoable. So it's like a non-destructive edit. And if we don't like any of these, of course we can go back to normal. But that's essentially blend modes, and different colors on top of other colors will give you different effects. And if you have, let's import an image. Let's grab. And let's place it on the bottom. Let's get rid of this guy. We can do like lighten. Let's do an overlay. Or darken. So I have this black and white image, and I can make it yellow now. So there's a lot of fun things you can do. We're not using images in this assignment, but I just want you guys to know that is a fun effect we can do. So the next Next thing I want to go through is the actual effects, the object effects. So object effects are a good way to kind of add, essentially just visual effects to each shape. So if we go to the effects at the top, and let's try distort and transform, maybe pucker and bloat. And these will give you sort of fun alterations to the shape. You see, if I pucker it, the shape puckers inwards. And if I bloat, it sort of bloats outwards like a balloon. So if you imagine like a balloon getting, like the air getting sucked out, maybe the balloon is getting air. What's really nice is a lot of these have previews, so you can see what your shape will end up being before you apply it. Maybe we'll do something like that. And then this one, let's try some more effects. Tweak. And you see the shape is getting transformed in different ways. So this, all these effects, I recommend just kind of going through, playing with, seeing how you can, if you like, how your shapes can be altered, and how they can become part of your composition. All right, so that is just a brief overview of effects. I'm not going to go through every one. Maybe I'll do one more actually. Let's do blur. And we can add multiple effects to objects. Maybe let's zoom out so we can see. And I think because it's a solid color, let's change this to a gradient and then go in with brush strokes, zoom out, and oh, wow. So all these different raster effects here, we could play with the sliders, and you see there's like a textured effect right there. Scale it, less smooth. Maybe make it blocks. Paint dabs. And maybe we'll do a sponge. Okay, cool. Great. So we have the blur and then the sponge on that guy. So again, all these are something you just essentially have to try. Because for this assignment, we want to use 3 or more different effects or stylizations utilized in our compositions. So the next thing I'm going to go over is Pathfinder, which I talked a little bit about in assignment 1. So let's go ahead and make 2 shapes. Oh. So Pathfinder, you'll find that in properties. When you select 2 shapes, over here on the right, you'll see Pathfinder. There are 4 different ways we can combine or sort of Boolean shapes together. So as you can see, like these are 2 separate shapes, but if we click and drag to select both of them, we can combine them into one shape. Let's undo. We can find the difference of where they intersect. And whichever one is on top, so you'll notice if I select minus front, the second one, it's going to subtract. It's going to minus the front shape from the lower shape. Then if we do intersect, we will only get where they intersect. So if I move this a little bit in, you'll see there's my new intersection. And then exclude, so that's going to exclude where they are touching. And this is a really lovely way to get more complex shapes. So let me undo, okay. The next tool I want to talk about is the Shapebuilder tool. And you'll find that in your toolbar right here. So it looks like a little cloud with a selection tool in there. What is the hotkey for that? Shift M. And you have to make sure you have your shape selected. Grab shapes, the Shapebuilder tool. And if you see, as I hover over the shapes, we get this like darkened grid. What I do is just click and drag. You see the line sort of generates. And that will create or combine these shapes the same way, or not the same way, but a very similar way as the Pathfinder. Actually, I think it is the same. If I look at it, yeah, that's the same. So I know I've been saying this in class, but there are multiple ways to do the same thing in Illustrator. It's just which one works for your workflow. There's not really a wrong answer as long as you are finding, you are finding success in what your goals are visually. So, all right. So that is the Shapebuilder tool. Let's zoom out. Let's move over here and we will work on creating patterns. So let me unlock my guides. I see they're not exact. And it's okay if they're not exact on your assignment, just close. I'm just being nitpicky right now. Lock the guides. So let's create a pattern. And what's great about patterns is we can add them to our swatches. I'm just going to open up window swatches. And let's create, wrong layer. Let's create a circle. Let's give it a fill of a gradient. Oops, why did I do that? I don't know. swatches. And I also want gradient. I just want to change the color. Boom. Why do I keep doing that? Shoot. Okay, there we go. So we learned how to create swatches in module 3, but we can create a pattern swatch. So let me make that small, and I'm going to go to Object, Pattern, Make, and then a little pop-up window should say a new pattern has been added to the swatches panel. And you'll see right here in my swatches, I have a new swatch. I'm going to press OK. And this is fine. I'm going to say done. Now, you need to see the pattern went away, but what we can do is grab a shape and apply that pattern to the shape. So we could create lots of really cool things with this. Let's do a star. Maybe make like a flower, an object, pattern, make. Oops. I have to get out of the edit. Object, pattern, make. Great. Okay. And then I can put an offset in by tile type. So under the name, I mean, I would, or if you can name these, you don't have to. But under name, there's tile type. We can change how the offset is. Let's do. Oops. Kind of like that. And all right, let's press done to save it. And we'll select our other object. And now we have this pattern within our objects. Do the same thing here. And if you remember from the beginning of the video, I had, let's go undo, undo, undo. There. So I created the, this blur and sponge effect. So these effects are going to remain even if I change the color. And that also means these effects will remain if I apply this pattern. So you can kind of see the like blurred out little, the little shapes within here. So you can create almost like unlimited amount of visual effects through here, through combining the effects as well as patterns and colors. So the last thing I want to go through is something called the clipping mask. And what a clipping mask does is it restrains a shape based on what is on top of it. So let's make a star, move that guy there, and then we'll do a polygon, move him there. Then I want the star on top because essentially what I want to do is, let's make these solid so you can see it better. What I want to do is cut this star out of this polygon. Of course, I could do, something like that with the Pathfinder. Or I could go Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Oh, okay, so I have that in reverse, my bad. So cutting out, boom, boom. Let's make this guy a little bit bigger. Actually, let's make him smaller. Make him smaller. And let's put him on top. And go Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And where that polygon intersects will cut off whatever is hanging off. So whatever is not touching that shape, whatever is not within that top shape will be removed. And this is great, especially if you're like resizing or like trying to fit images or specific graphics on your artboards. Probably one of my most used tools in Illustrator, especially when I'm building like presentation boards for clients or for, you know, my own work. I used it a lot in like reviews when I was presenting my work, so that I could fit my images on the page without sort of distorting them. And it's, you know, it's like a crop, but like a special crop, because you can, you know, you can use special shapes, like not just square or rectangle, but like polygons. So that's kind of an overview of, well, that is the overview of the tools you'll be using in this assignment. What we want for the submission is a total of 8. Let me write that down. Make that really big so we can see. So we want a total of 8 artboards at 9 by 9 inches. And we want to utilize the guides to break up everything in thirds. Because our artboards are 9 by 9, that's pretty easy to do. And if you set up your guides, or I'm sorry, if you set up your grids like I did, your grids are those gray lines you see there. If you set up those at 3 inches with a subdivision of 1, you'll be good to go in setting up your guides at those same 3-inch intervals. Make sure, just a reminder, make sure when you do that new file generation that you have spacing of 3 inches. That will just make your life a lot easier. You don't have to move artboards around. Other requirements for this is we want to utilize 3 or more shapes. So, so you want to build 3 shapes at least. We want to use 3 or more effects or stylization. So that could mean, you know, not just the vector effects, but the raster effects as well that you see. We also want to play around with 3 colors. I would recommend just building a swatch. So let's go ahead and do that. new swatch. And I'm gonna just make a new color group. New swatch. And one more new swatch. So build out one color group that you're going to be utilizing with 3 colors. And that's it. Yeah. So those are the requirements. To submit, just make sure you are saving your .ai file within your Google Drive. You should also have that PDF file in your Google Drive in the Module 4 folder. And then within the Assets folder in that module, so within Module 4 folder, you have the Assets folder, put in your screenshot. And we all know how to screenshot by now, but that is really it. Make sure that I'm the editor. You should have that already set up from Module 2, but if not, just make sure you are making me the editor, copy and paste that shared URL within the Canvas submission. So I think that is about it. What I recommend doing is checking out those examples. I'll bring this over again. Check out the examples, not only the student examples, but actual like professional artists. My recommendation is pick one inspiration and sort of build out your compositions based on that. These are abstract, but we are, building our compositions through this rule of thirds. Meaning we are filling up the entire page. We want to be filling up the entire page or the entire artboard with shapes. Let's go. There we go. And this, obviously this is just me messing around. But we don't want just one shape or 2 shapes like this. We want to really fill it up, see what we can do, especially with those effects and the blend modes, to create something interesting. Oh, one last thing. So we did talk about clipping masks in Module 1. When you built your pattern, some of you guys had like shapes hanging off the edge. I want to show you a quick trick on how to fix that, besides using a clipping mask, which, of course I can do. Grab everything, object, clipping mask, make, and that will cut off the edges. But, oops, my bad. A quick way to do it, especially if you have a lot of artboards, let me zoom out. Especially if you have a lot of artboards that do have those sort of overhangs like this. And instead of making 8 clipping masks, what we can do is go to View, trim view. Boom. So that will give you those nice cropped edges. Those shapes are still there. We can still move the shapes around, but you just don't see anything that hangs off the artboard, which is really lovely, just for keeping things nice and neat. You see my text got cut off too, and we can just go back to view trim mode to see the normal mode. So, all right, that is about it for real.